Hi folks, it's Smitty and Katie again, and you know what we're doing. What are we doing?
No, now you tell me.
We're making a video. What game do we have today, Toots?
Race to Moscow.
Race to Moscow. And what is on the front of the box?
I don't know. Let me see. Looks like a train.
It is a train engine. It's a Reichsbahn one. And what does it look like it have on?
Elephant ears.
Elephant ears. So we like trains with elephant ears. And of course we've got, let's see, we have Golden Puppy under here, Collie in the hall, and I think we've got the Dingbat in back you, don't we?
Yeah, Dingbat's back here.
But this was a game we had thought of getting back when Barry was still alive. When Barry Kendall was still alive. And of course, Barry sadly passed. So we kind of fussed around and didn't look at it again and then decided to buy it ourselves. But what does your husband love almost as much as he loves you? Russian front games. He likes Russian front games. We just got done playing the new one from Ty Bomba, Von Manstein's Last Stand. So, you noted to me there were seemingly a lot of pieces with this game.
We got a lot of baggies on the table.
We have a lot of little baggies and decks of cards, don't we? And they're not Cards Against Humanity cards.
No.
Because if you notice, they say North, Center, and South, the three army groups that invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. So, we will then soon turn this over. You all have to endure looking at me, too bad. But hold the box out a little further, Miss Katie. Extend it, because you've got those really long arms.
Quiet.
What do we say about your arms?
I'm a proud knuckle dragger.
She is a knuckle dragger. And look, the nice thing about this box, it's not glossy. And does it feel more substantial than a number of the boxes from European games? They often are kind of soft boxes.
This is a good box.
It's a good box. So it's a box a cat could sit on and not damage.
Well, I don't know. It depends on the cat.
Well, even some of our cats who are on the Fat Boy program. So, all right, folks, we'll be turning this over in a minute. And what do you always do, Miss Katie?
Bye-bye.
Bye-byes. Hi, folks, it's Smitty. And of course, as the lovely and beautiful Miss Katie was holding earlier, Race to Moscow 1941. And this game was sent to us because we bought it. How about that? So that means I can be vicious and nasty on my review then, okay? Well, no, of course we can't. We will always be as always, judicious, fair, and hopefully enlightening. Now, different kind of map, isn't it, Miss Katie? Because it's going, we would probably turn it around the other way. You could turn it around the other way, except then you wouldn't be able to read it. Because this is going, here's the west, here's the east. So you're going this way on the map. You notice that the areas are slightly colored different, the lines. Army Group North, Army Group Center, Army Group South. Now, the map sits flat. There are no issues with the flat. To make it stand up here, we did a little bit of Scotch taping behind it, but it sits well, so don't worry about that. Now here you have a roundhouse, and you have a transportation area, and I need to consult my notes to see what that is, and that means I need to put my glasses on because to look down there. One is, you say the yard is for transportation stock. The roundhouse is your reserve. So these are ones that are ready to go out. These are others that will come out later. You have infantry, of course, and armor units. Infantry can move one area at a time unless you spend an extra food. Then it can force march and go one extra. It's not like War in the East where You could always force march, but you had to roll a die. And if you rolled a 6, that 6-5 infantry unit of the Germans would flip over and become a 1-5 comp group. Armor can move up to 3. What do you think makes an army unit go? What makes an army unit go, miss? What do you have to have?
Tanks.
And what do tanks need?
Fuel.
Yes, because they are thirsty. So, to move an armor unit or a panzer unit, you need to spend these neat little fuel cans. Okay? Because this is ultimately a game about logistics. To do a forced march also, oh, correction. Here's the food. I stand corrected. This is ammo. So if you were to go into, once you cross this fortified zone here around Moscow and in the south, just to even move into that area, you need to spend an extra ammo. Now, cards. Each army has its own little card, and as such, well, let me go there for a second. Like the 16th Army, it has on it, because it's an infantry army, that would be the ammo, fuel, and food. Because it's an infantry army, it needs less fuel. All right, and so you would have these cards out in front of you, or beside you, or however you're setting up your game to play. And you track your supply status that way. Now, you have here, like we talked, the gray is north. That has 3 armies, 4 armies, 4 armies. Trucks can carry up to 4 supplies, and trains can carry up to 6. So it's one of those, you got to keep moving stuff forward. And what's nice about this game also goes ahead and has railhead advancement, because rail was critical to the Germans, because that was the way they could move most volume of supply. Now, logistics cards. Here's your logistics card. You can take, place, or what's that other word? I gotta put my glasses on again, folks. It is possess. All right. You notice also with that, lines are either single lines or double lines. Like here's a double line. Double line means either north or center could attack there or move there. Smolensk, for example, Army Group Center path to Moscow, is only single. And you notice some of these places have medals for you to win. Medals allow you to do other things. Right, there are the Soviet deck. The Soviet deck is comprised of blue cards and green cards. When you pull into an area that has, say, a Soviet marker on it, or a Soviet unit, then you have to pull a Soviet card, and you may have a combat action. To win a combat action, you need to spend 2 ammo. If it's an elite army or an elite Soviet Panzer type unit, it takes 3 ammo to win. Okay, that seems really simplistic. There's not really combat. I don't like this game because there's not combat. Well, logistics, my friends, is a form of combat, because in addition to being an armor officer, what am I also?
A log weenie.
I'm a log weenie. I am a logistician. Or a logistician. I am a log weenie. So therefore, this is kind of exciting to think about quantifying the war in a different sense, because Napoleon says, how does an army move?
On its stomach.
On its stomach. Okay, we've got, we also have, you will face various fronts. Northwest front, Western Front with Dmitry Pavlov, who was taken back to Moscow and shot in July 1941. Kirpanis in the Southwest Front, who actually did a pretty good job. Budny in the Southwestern Front, who's got the huge handlebar mustache. Later in the Western Front, Zhukov, who we really like in Death of Stalin. Who played Zhukov in that?
Was that Steve Buscemi?
No, he was Khrushchev, the guy who played the scientist in Armageddon that we like.
I can see him, but I don't know his name.
Okay, and then we got Vorzlaw in the Northwestern Front, who's got the much better Soviet mustache. So let's see, what else do we want to talk about? Your turn. You have your turn, then you have Soviet reaction. Well, that's pretty easy. Automatic win. You take Leningrad, Moscow, or Rostov. Now, I'm not really certain why they picked Rostov, except I guess they had to pick something down there. Army Group South took Rostov for about 8 seconds. It was a little longer than that, but they didn't really hold it very long. And von Rundstedt pulled out of it and then was sacked in 1941. If you enter an area, as we talked about, if there's an army there, you have to draw a Soviet card. So it would then tell you what your reaction is in regards to that. If there's not anybody there, the applicable army group gets to draw one of its cards. Like here, this one says, what does that say, Miss Katie?
Captured supplies.
And they're rolling down a fuel barrel to the back of the tank. This one would say
captured stock.
And that's a KV-1.
Calm yourself.
And then, of course, this one,
requisitions,
which means we're stealing from the peasants. All right, so there we got so much of the basic. Oh, encirclements happen in this game. Gotta like that. They didn't totally forget about the war aspect in terms of logistics. Now, let's look at counters. You have Sud, then you got Soviet counters, and on the back you got, they're kind of hard to see here, they are railroad tracks. They're very hard to see on this one. Then you've got more medals and halts and air domes, because on the other side you see Stukas. Okay, and on this one we have the other two army groups, and on this one you can see much better the railroad tracks. Much better. All right, now let's talk about trains, your little trains, bunkers, defensive systems, trucks. We talked about ammo, fuel, and food. We also have with the game 3-player aid cards for each one of the army groups that tells you what you're doing that turn and how to do it, how to conduct it. And even if I just keep turning around that way, nobody can see anything, can they? Not a good idea. So there you have the basics, and now what do we always talk about?
Books.
Books, because we love books. And I know many of you love books because they're kind of the other part of the lifeblood of the hobby. They're maybe the hemoglobin of our hobby. How about that? Oh, we also got, with the person we bought this from, 3 Ju-86 figures and 1 S-boat. These models were made at the scale of 1/300. I'm not certain how they really add in, except rather than using a marker. But you notice they are the colors of the 3 army groups. Oh, that reminds me, because I had Miss Katie with the box. Let me show you inside the box. The box, first as we noted, pretty stable, big enough for Petunia. For those who know our one-eyed girl, Petunia's a big girl. Petunia could fit in this box with no trouble. This is nice. It has a nice, big, deep, stronger injection plastic. And here you can see the various field armies. So we got that. Now, books. Well, we got a lot of books to talk about today, folks. First, there's Martin van Creeval, Supply and War. Logistics from Wallenstein to Packen. His section on World War II, pretty darn good. On the East Front, pretty good. Likes to talk about German train engines freezing up. Because German trains had their pipes on the outside of the engines, and on the Russian front, they couldn't push through enough heat and keep the boilers hot enough, and engines froze up. Trains don't run well when they're frozen. We've got Germany in the Second World War, Volume 4, 1 and 2 in this book. The initial attack on the Soviet Union, mandatory reading. A book that Armor Magazine sent us to review, Moscow Tram Stop, a doctor's experience on the Russian front. Highly recommended. I got this on a whim from them, and they sort of asked me, well, would you want to do this one? Because nobody else seemed that terribly interested in it, because it's not sexy. It turned out to be a tremendous read from this guy talking about medical services on the invasion. Simply fascinating. Craig Luther, friend of ours, who, as Miss Katie says, this is a honking book. It is a hidden gem. Most folks don't know it because it came from Schaefer Publishing. So therefore it doesn't get the same exposure and doesn't get put on bookshelves at BAM and I was going to say Borders.
Proud of you.
I was going to say Borders. Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble.
Now,
yeah.
So doesn't get the same exposure. This mainly focuses on Army Group Center. And speaking of,
we have a visitor.
Speaking of her Petunia-ness, there she is. Petunia's looking for the box already. Frank Ellis's book, his revamping of Barbarossa, is worth your time because in the appendice he talks about Pavlov, whose card we looked at earlier, and talks about, they actually have the, what do I want to call it? Transcript of his interrogation by the KGB before they shot him. Why he failed in 1941 to defend the Smolensk land bridge. And then we have Glance's two books. Colossus Reborn, mandatory book, and Stumbling Colossus. Petunia's doing a good job today, isn't she? And Stumbling Colossus, which is about the Red Army prior to the war and essentially how screwed it was to fight a modern war at the start between reorganization, which there is in this game, theater reorganization, which means all your supplies kind of go to hell in a handbasket. And Petunia's back.
She didn't want to be on the floor.
No, she didn't want to be on the floor. And of course, as the Red Army struggles to recuperate and effectively fight the Germans. So, that's it, folks. I'll show you things close up in a bit. And Petunia waves to you today, too. Thanks, folks. All right, folks, I'm back. As near as I can determine, the interplay of the game is between, of course, the logistics and the game cards. Like here. Here when we talked about the player A's card. It tells you the player's turn and quick, nice little summary on both sides of what you do that turn. Personally impressed that it's so well thought out. Now, and like of course, we've got Army Group North cards, Army Group Centers cards, which of course they have 2 Panzer Troop, and then we got Army Group South, that has balanced by only 1 armor. Again, I have to say this is good historical work here. We have various Soviet cards here. Because it's not an elite unit, it only takes 2 to kill. Because this is an elite unit, it's telling you it takes 3 to kill, and such. OKH cards. Here we get air support. We get a Stuka. Here we get additional transport, and here we get an additional move because it's mission tactics. Okay, gotta like that. Let's look at the baggies close up. They're just baggies full of stuff, sweet kids. I mean, come on. But it's food. Here's the ammo. And of course, here's the oil. Trucks. Bunkers. And as we like to call them, choo-choos. Each army has its own logistics tracking card. You see, that'd be good if I turned it around, wouldn't it? Here it is. Tells you your current status. This is the better status because it's a bigger yard. Now let's look at counters. Counters are counter sheet here, metals here, and more here. Let's turn it around, Robert. But let's go back to Army Group Centers one, because there you can see the rail movement, the rail advancement. You flip that over, you can know that the rail has advanced. Let's take a look closer at the map. It reminds me of some of the GMT ones with, I want to call it area movement, point-to-point movement. It's an attractive map. I don't find it unattractive. And of course, when you get out here further, well, the weather's getting colder, so it becomes grayer. All right, and now what do we always talk about? We then get our books out, don't we? Okay. Stumbling Colossus. You want that one, folks. If you don't own it, you want that one. Colossus Reborn. Well, you want it too. These are all books, and you can see that all these books have marked up for certain areas. This is the one that has the appendice of Pavlov's interrogation by the KGB. Here is the Craig Luther book, another good one. Here is the Moscow tram stop. You see a German field hospital in operation here. And of course, the official German history of World War II. These are expensive, folks. Try to buy them on the cheap. I've got mine because they've asked me to review them. And of course, Creedwald, who's a hit and miss guy often, usually more hit, Israeli historian. Pretty good analysis. Unlike Max Boot, he hasn't gone off the reservation. But his stuff on the East Front of World War II here, very not long, but gives you a very good sense. So there you have it, folks. We're looking forward to playing this one. We got to get under table. First, we're going to have to move Petunia off the table. But as always, we thank everybody who has continued to look. And to those folks who have joined recently, we thank you. And you all have a blessed day. Bye-bye.